Welcome to Cricinfo, the lineup. And this week the lineup has changed because Ronak Kapoor in our last episode had Sachin Tendulkar batting at number 3 in India's all-time great Test 11. So he's been cancelled temporarily. This week we have Shashrik Roy joining us along with Vishal and Yash. And this time,
the name hasn't changed.
Yeah, the name of the show at least is the same. It's still called the lineup. Otherwise, we were planning to change it every week, but we've decided to keep it the same. The production guys were saying it's too much to recreate the packaging every time. So this week we're going to discuss the best Test all-rounders of the 21st century. Now we're doing it a little differently because we are including all-rounders who've played in the 90s, but it has to be anyone who's played at least 20 tests in the 21st century. So we have some players whose careers span both the 90s and the 2000s. And there's an interesting mix. So we'll start with the first one.
More filters?
No, there are no more
minimum
filters.
Wickets, minimum runs.
No, but we tried doing that and there were about 3 all-rounders from this century. It's not been a great century for all-rounders.
That will be easy then to make the list.
And the first name I'm going to discuss is R. Ashwin. Okay. Now the first question is, Yash, is Ashwin an all-rounder or is he an outstanding spin bowler who can bat down the order?
To have more than 3,000 runs, to have more than 300 wickets, to also have at least 5 centuries and 10 5-fers. There are only 5 men who've done it in all Test history. There's Kapil Dev, there's Ian Botham, there's Imran Khan, there's R. Ashwin, and there's a 5th name which I will hold back for a bit because that will form later arguments for me.
Is he a wild card? Yeah, obviously.
We'll find out. We'll find out. But yeah, that's about as elite a category of all-round ability in Test cricket, and Ashwin is one of those. So, yeah.
I actually had Ashwin down at number 4.
At 4?
Yeah.
That's very high. Why?
I think it's because of both the contribution with bat and ball. 6 Test centuries is actually quite a lot. It's more than Jadeja. I know it's come over many more Test innings, but he's also got tons of wickets and he's got them at a really fast click. So
some of his early centuries, like the one he got at the Wankhede, the match was in a tricky position, and there was one in St. Lucia where I think India were something like 80 for 5 or 70 for 4 or something, and then and then he got a big century there and India ended up winning that Test. So some important innings, but is there the consistency in the batting, Vishal, to justify number 4?
Well, since we don't have any of the names right now,
you might as well just put him there.
Put him.
Because remember,
anyway.
guys, we are ranking him as an all-rounder. Of course, if it was as a bowler, he might be in the top 2. But this is.
I think as a starting spot, I thought it would be 4 or 5.
Okay.
We can go through some of the other names and then.
Fielding not a concern for anybody.
Well, if we start bringing fielding, then.
Especially like in India, we always compare Ashwin with Jadeja.
I mean,
who's a better all-rounder, and there he is trumped by Jadeja by a distance. So let's put him at 5 maybe.
If you're getting fielding into the conversation, then unfortunately this card can't go on this board.
No, he was a decent slip catcher, Ashwin, at one point. We'll start him at number 4 and see where he ends up. Okay, so this one I thought would create more debate. The next one, I think there should be no debate because it's Jacques Kallis. Number 1. Just put him at number 1, right? I mean, anyone wants to have an argument against that, I don't know what it would be.
I challenge you.
No.
Yeah, I mean,
not even with my wild card. No.
Not even.
I mean,
definitely not with my wild card.
The thing about Kallis is he's one of the greatest Test batters ever, and that makes people forget that he took almost 300 Test wickets, and he did that bowling alongside Pollock and Donald and then Steyn and Intini, and he's still, like, in any other team he would have been one of the 2 best bowlers. In South Africa, he was the 3rd or 4th seamer, but he still took that many wickets.
There's no debate around Jacques Kallis. The only thing I'll mention is towards the end of his Test career, there was a graphic showed by the broadcaster. His batting and bowling numbers. His batting numbers, not centuries and all, but average was as good as Tendulkar's, something like that. Yeah. And wickets as good as Zaheer Khan's. Correct. So he's like a combination of Tendulkar and Zaheer Khan. Yeah. So he has to be number 1.
He also did a lot for hair replacement therapy in the cricket community.
Excellent. Does that give him extra points? Or?
No, he's already number 1, so it's okay. The next name I have should be a little bit more debatable, and that's Shakib Al-Hasan.
Yeah.
I'll let Yash go first. Where would you place him? Below Ashwin, higher than Ashwin?
Actually, I had him at 4 from this list because I had Ashwin torn between 5 and 6. Now, for Shakib, there's not much to be said about how legitimate an all-rounder he is, because among the best batters of Bangladesh, among the best bowlers for Bangladesh,
For a while, the best batter and best bowler. For a while.
correct, and for a long while, the best all-rounder across the globe, because you talk a test batting average touching 38, a test bowling average around 30, and what would the arguments against be would generally be that the perception is, yeah, of course, played in Bangladesh and did heaps of damage in those tests. But interestingly enough, you look at his numbers in New Zealand and West Indies. In West Indies, in 6 tests, he's averaged 23, taken 22 wickets, also averaged 36 with bat. To me, New Zealand stands out. He averages 74 with bat in 4 tests in New Zealand, while also averaging 40 and taking a handful of wickets, which isn't bad for a spinner in those conditions.
One thing though is in Ashwin's favor is that even if let's say they have similar bowling numbers, is that when Ashwin would come on to bowl in India especially, they would mostly on average already some wickets would have fallen when India were bowling. But Shakib would have to be the partnership breaker. Or the opposition would be something like 200 for 2 if Bangladesh were playing away. So that responsibility was much higher on Shakib's shoulders. So if he was getting those wickets and still competing with Ashwin for a place, I would give him some extra points.
Yeah, and we also have to put it in context because remember, Shakib grew up in an age where Bangladesh weren't even playing Test cricket.
Exactly.
And so, like, he's kind of put Bangladesh on the map. He's so important in the history of their cricket.
Yeah.
So, Shashrik, you were the one who said Ashwin 4. Where would you put
I
Shakib?
actually had him up as high as number 2 for this reason. I think the numbers are good, but you also have to add some context to it. He never had the kind of support that an Ashwin or Jadeja had, be it the batting or the bowling. So he was always the go-to guy for Bangladesh, and there wasn't, frankly, that much around him for large parts of his career when he played.
Yeah.
With that in mind, I think the all-round impact that he had, I put him at number 2.
Their first and only test win in Sri Lanka, I think he got 100.
Yeah.
Then there was that home test against Australia, Mirpur, which is
Correct.
like a huge win to beat Australia.
And
where again, he got 10 wickets.
He
or
took
something.
5 first in both innings. He had a half century as well. Contributions in West Indies, in New Zealand.
But the only thing is, we're going to talk about some other players who have had big away performances. And now I know it's not like Shakib's playing for Bangladesh, who don't compete that much away from home. But do we still like say that, oh, you could put him as high as number 2, considering some of the other players we'll be discussing have got big performances in tough away conditions? That's the question. As an all-rounder, I would have him above Ashwin, so
I
we'll
hope
keep him
Ashwin
at
is
3
not
for
watching
now.
this when it goes out, but
This is as an all-rounder. Okay,
Yes.
I'll say it for
Which
like the
includes
seventh time. The next name, this one I think will cause quite a bit of debate because it's Ben Stokes, player of great innings, at his best, a match winner with bat and ball. But is he at his best enough, Shashrik, for him to be above Ashwin and Shakib?
I know Kohli likes him a lot, but I'm going to put him at number 5. I don't think he goes above Ashwin and Shakib, to be honest.
And as a bowler, he has one test, like he won that test in Bangladesh in Chattogram. He's got, I think, a 5-4 at the SCG, which is pretty significant. He's also got some very good bowling innings in India.
But sadly, because he's now gone the best part of the last 5 years, not playing as an all-rounder, in the last 5 years, he's actually averaged 13 overs per test because he's not bowled. In 2022, he did a lot of bowling. But all the other years from 2020 onwards, he's done close to no bowling, which means out of a sample of a 10-year career, we are looking at half of it where he's actually not played as an all-rounder.
his bowling average is still 32. If he is not bowling regularly also and still making an impact, like a lot, like you don't always need 5-4s or centuries.
And
to
200
make
plus
an
wickets.
impact.
So it's not like bowling average of 32 with a small sample size, like
And
a
he's played
decent sample
over
size.
he's played over 100 test matches already.
And 10 player of the match awards. That's another thing that I was surprised when I looked up because people say, oh, he just played that Headingley innings. But no, he's got like player of the matches in Cape Town, other venues. Everyone agree we can squeeze him between Shakib and Ashwin for now. Or
If
Ashwin
that
higher.
is the consensus, then of course I would have put him at number 2 also.
Oh, ahead of Shakib and Ashwin.
Yeah.
I would
He
put
just
him.
found an excuse to move Ashwin down.
I would put him in between Shakib and Ashwin just because Shakib, like overall as a player, Stokes I would argue is better than Shakib, but Shakib's influence on Bangladesh and the fact that, like I said, he's playing for a country which didn't even have Test cricket, and then he comes in and does what he does. So that's why I would have Shakib ahead of Ben Stokes. But the next name I would have personally, I would have above Ashwin, Shakib, and Stokes, and that's Jadeja. Anyone has an argument against that? Or
I mean,
Shakib
I
obviously
I
does,
obviously had.
because you prefer Shakib to.
Yeah, I obviously
Jadeja.
had. If I've got the numbers correct, I believe Shakib had a better average than Jaddu.
With the bat.
Yeah, with the bat. Even when you look at Jadeja and the wickets that he's picked up, it's always. I mean, of course, in the overseas tests, he's the one that they go with. But at home, he has an Ashwin alongside him who's either blocking one end completely or he's taking the wickets, and this guy has to. Jaddu plays the
You
supporting.
don't rate
pretty well.
Taijul Islam. Good bowler, man. No, I'm being serious. Like, he was a good bowler.
I mean, you want the short answer, then I guess no.
Just keep the video.
Taijul Islam and then Mehdi Hasan Miraz later. I don't think Bangladesh was short on other spin options.
With almost the same reasoning, I have a point in favor of Jadeja, that when you're operating against a guy who has 500 plus test wickets, you're very likely to not get a lot of wickets. Because Ashwin is that much of a wicket taker. So I actually think some of Jadeja's home test wickets can be valued a little better than they are.
Very important contribution to that last Border Gavaskar Trophy win in Australia, right? The 50 at the MCG, plus he got 4 wickets in Sydney, ran out Steve Smith. Even if you look actually at, if you remember Jadeja's performances even in England, he's got a century there, he's got a 70, even little things like that Oval Test that India won in 21. He took only 2 wickets, but he tied up an end and caused runouts, caused mayhem. England looked like they might chase the score at one point. And Jadeja kind of broke the game, and then Bumrah came and destroyed England. So there are these small contributions Jadeja has, and the reason I would have him above Shakib is because of that. Like, he's contributed to test wins and series wins in places like Australia and England.
I feel like Shakib is losing some points here because the smaller contributions that Jadeja has made, which we all remember from historic Indian tests, even if India were losing abroad, Shakib also has a lot of such contributions. We just don't know about them because we haven't seen enough Bangladesh
We
cricket.
do this interview series called 25 Questions, which everybody should watch, by the way. But I've been surprised at the number of batters who say that the toughest bowler they face in tests is Jadeja in India. Steve Smith, Johnny Bairstow, Faf du Plessis. These are the kind of batters who say the toughest challenge they face is facing Jadeja on Indian pitches.
They all said Jadeja.
Yeah, like in terms of what is the toughest challenge you faced of a bowler in a particular conditions, they all say Jadeja, which is pretty, that speaks really highly of him. So I
So
think,
we know where you are placing him.
I mean, I would put him at 2. Does anyone else
Yeah,
have
I
an
agree
issue?
with that.
Or?
That's fine.
Of the present list, yeah, he's 2.
Okay, so he
Oh.
goes 2. So
So
Yash
Yash in the
is
future.
going to want his wild card at number 2, it sounds
No,
like.
no, no. Not
Okay.
my wild card.
Do you want Freddie Flintoff at number 2? Is that the guy? Okay.
Number
Yash
8.
is just like...
I've forgotten who the other two are, so I don't know whether to put him at 8 or 6. So let's see.
Flintoff, man. It's
I had
Flintoff.
yeah. I mean, 6 would be okay.
One
to
of
be
the
honest.
greatest series ever, 2005.
Yeah,
Yeah,
2005.
and that's my point. 1 series. His overall numbers against Australia read quite well.
Yeah, he
Batting average 33, bowling average 33,
against most
which
teams.
for Australia is quite good. But remove just 5 tests, and the batting average falls to 28. The bowling average climbs up to almost 40. Those aren't good numbers. Against India,
Really? Just
batting
5 tests?
Yeah,
Oh, I haven't
just
done this
removing those
calculation,
5
so I have
tests.
to believe you.
And you look at India, his overall test record is batting average 25-26, bowling average high 30s, 37-38.
For a fast bowler, that's not
Yeah,
terrible.
but my point is that there are enough players in this list who have done much more as all-rounders over prolonged periods of time.
So he's not in the top 5.
Yeah, but my thing is, I
So
don't think he's
are we
8.
talking about
I don't
6,
think he's 8.
7, 8?
I think he's
Yeah,
at
so
least
of the-
7.
Yeah, at least 7. I have a different 8, so at least 7.
Yeah, I also have a different 8.
Of the 3 who
So
I know are...
let's start with Flintoff at
Let's
7.
start
Let's
with
get the other names
It's
there.
fine, my wild card
The
will
other
anyway
name,
knock him off.
I think Jason Holder, he's a lovely guy. Firstly, like I've interviewed him, one of the best interviews I've done, Jason Holder. But where would you place him, honest, objectively? In this
For me,
tournament?
he was 7, Flintoff 8.
Okay. Vishal?
Yeah, I would put him above Flintoff.
Okay.
Also,
So-
like some of the reasons we discussed while bringing up Shakib with some of the players who've been part of better test nations was also that when Jason Holder started playing, West Indies were not a great test nation. Right now, they are a really good team at home, and one of them is fast bowling. The reasons behind that.
But if you look at his record in Sena nations, where you're supposed to be really good as a seamer, he averages over 100 in Australia, over 200 in New Zealand, and 40 plus in England, where he's played 9 tests. And England is a place where a swing bowler like Holder should be doing better.
These should have been his batting averages.
You have
I
to keep him
still
at least
feel
at
like
7.
Flintoff was a better all-rounder than Holder, to be honest.
I mean,
think
you
we're
guys
maybe-
decide this. I'm anyway not going to agree with the number 8 we are getting eventually.
You can move Flintoff to 6 and put him on 7, and then
No,
we
does
can have the
everyone
debate on the
agree?
8.
Does everyone agree that Holder should be ahead of Flintoff? Then obviously I have to concede.
Pairest of margins, but yes,
Okay.
Holder ahead.
I
With
would
an England
still have
player.
Flintoff higher. Who would you rather have a beer with? They both would be great drinking buddies.
I wonder how much of an impact that has on like being an all-rounder on the test field, but
The next I have is Shaun Pollock. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, just one thing before I mention Pollock is that we have to consider his performances 2000 onwards. Although again outstanding even in the 2000s, but 10 of his 16 5-wicket hauls did come in the 90s when he was an exceptional bowler. Continued to be exceptional, but based
Quicker at that time.
he was quicker in the 90s. But still, I mean, accuracy wise, this guy was like a metronome. Honestly, he was as good as McGrath in terms of just bowling the ball on that fourth stump. But as a batter, did he do enough to?
I can't believe that he's not in the top 5.
I think he should be.
Yeah. In fact, in my list, if I'm being honest, of the 8, he was actually in the top 3.
Okay.
And here's why. Even after losing the pace, the bowling average in the 2000s is under 25. In the subcontinent, which early to mid 2000s was not a good place for fast bowlers, he averaged 27 in India, less than 22 in Pakistan, 25 in Sri Lanka. And now let's talk about the batting. A batting average in the 2000s of 44 in Australia, 31 in South Africa, 68 in England.
Okay.
These are the batting numbers. Overall batting average in the 2000s, 33. Average difference of 9.
But I was comparing Pollock actually even to Jadeja because I considered him for as high as number 2. Jadeja has many more 50s and 100s in wins than Pollock. I think Pollock has around 5 or 6 50s and 100.
South Africa didn't have the easy... I know they had series wins in England, but they didn't have easy test series in England in that early 2000s period. And obviously no one had an easy time in Australia in that period. To average 44 and 68 in those two countries is a pretty good indicator of the batting ability that he possessed.
So his overall batting average is 32.56 in the period that we're talking about.
Correct. Yeah. In the 70 tests that he played in the 2000s.
Yeah, which is not top 3-4 level according to me. If
No, but as a bowler,
he's
was
a great
like-
bowler.
Yeah.
If you were doing a bowling list, I think he would definitely make it to the top 1, 2, 3 easy.
No, but I mean, if
But
we-
as an all-rounder, I don't think his batting.
I'll already tell you why he's above these two. In fact, these 3 for that matter. Test batting averages in this period: Flintoff 32.69, just ahead of Pollock. Holder 29.83, Ashwin 26.74. Now consider Pollock with the bowling, which none of us is refuting, and the batting, which is an average as good as
But this
Flintoff's.
guy is also a decent bowler, man. Ashwin.
Did he bat in an era when batting was slightly easier in Test cricket?
Comparatively, yes.
Yeah, probably.
So I would not put him above Ashwin. I would put him at 6.
Ashwin has runs in tough Indian conditions, but not in
fair,
swinging and
like-
bouncy conditions.
Yeah.
Pollock, I don't know how he was a good player of spin. He was. So I don't know. I'm starting to feel like Pollock should be higher than Stokes, but I'm not sure he should be higher than Ashwin, which is making me question
Yeah,
this whole
actually,
ranking.
that's what. I don't have Stokes ahead of Ashwin after all of our discussions.
Oh, so are we moving Ashwin back to 4 then?
No, I don't know. What do you guys feel? You guys
Okay,
tell
I'm
me.
proposing something.
Okay.
If you guys want to change it, change it.
And Pollock goes 4. Or,
No,
Ashwin,
Pollock
or Pollock goes 5.
5 on consensus.
Oh God, the English are really not going to be happy with us. Vishal's not agreeing with
I'm not
Stokes
English,
at
but
6,
I'm still
Flintoff
shaking my head.
6 and 8. Stokes is an impact player.
Stokes
man.
out of top 5, no way.
Yeah,
In
so
this list.
Stokes and
10
Pollock.
player of
That's the
the-
best I can. Stokes isn't ahead of. Is Stokes ahead of Ashwin?
As an all-rounder.
This is a rapid fire.
I don't know how many times I'm going to say that.
Yes.
Stokes ahead of Ashwin. Stokes ahead of
all-rounder?
Ashwin? Yes.
No.
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 Stokes ahead of Ashwin?
Oh, I think we're split because I would say yes as an
Okay.
all-rounder.
Yeah, because I'm saying no.
Yeah.
God. So Ketu, you tell us. This show is going off the rails.
Ashwin ahead of
Okay.
Yes.
Our producer has said Ashwin ahead of Stokes. So
Thank
that's
God
what
he
we're
did.
doing.
And while we're there,
Number 1.
Pollock ahead of.
I think now we have to put Pollock at 6. As good as he was, it's very hard actually.
Pollock is
I
screaming
mean,
at you anyway for
the
putting
thing-
him so down the order. So
This is our ranking. Let's move on to the wild cards.
let's start with Yash.
We'll start with Yash because
Why?
he has the most sensible one, I
we are
feel.
going-
But why do the others know here? You are
We
supposed
weren't
to know
supposed
it.
to know. Okay. Anyway, let's start. We don't know. We just assume you'll have the most sensible one.
Because
Wow.
I feel like you'll have really good arguments, which nobody will have an answer for, so we'll have to...
Okay. I mentioned that list at the start. That there are only 5 all-rounders in the history of Test cricket to have 3,000 plus runs, 300 plus wickets, 5 plus hundreds, and 10 plus fifers. Kapil Dev, Imran Khan, Ian Botham, R. Ashwin, and Daniel Vettori.
Okay.
That's the only reason.
It's
I
a list
feel
of
like I'm
5.
expecting more.
It's a list of 5 in the history of Test cricket. Now, if you want to focus in the 2000s, batting average touching 34, bowling average 34. Yes, his bowling average is on the higher side.
But bowled a lot in New Zealand.
But yeah, a spinner who had to bowl a lot of overs in New Zealand. So, in fact, New Zealand also played a lot of cricket in Australia at the time. And the bowling average being high makes sense. In this period, 600s, all 6 of his Test hundreds, and 17 out of his 20 career fifers. And here's the clincher for me of his bowling. Despite the average being high, 6 of those 17 5-wicket hauls came against Australia. That Australia of the early 2000s.
Shashik, do you remember any of those numbers?
I'm having a hard time remembering the first number, the fifth number, and the maybe 105th number that Yash just rattled off. But it's hard to argue against Yash. It's hard to argue against Vettori as well. I did think of him as a wild card, but I don't know. I just think it wasn't wild enough for a wild card, which is why I didn't go for it. But yeah, as an all-rounder, as all-round performances, yeah.
So I actually would also agree with moving him up, but I would put him in place of Holder and not Flintoff. Let's get to the other wildcards and then we'll do that, because I don't think any of our other wildcards will
Are gonna
stand
make
a
it.
chance. So let's go to Vishal's.
I think even Flintoff is not arguing against it. I took wildcard a little too literally. So more than a card, it's wild actually, which is Pat Cummins.
Okay. I'll be honest. The reason Vishal made this pick is because we didn't have enough stickers, and I told him just pick one of the guys who we had in the fast bowlers. So he just picked.
Just look at his smile.
Okay, Vishal. He doesn't have a Test century. Why is he an all-rounder?
Bowling, no discussion. In batting, he's played some really good knocks, which he bats below Mitchell Starc, which is why he's not considered a lot of times.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
I think these days he's above him, right? Surely, at number 8. But anyway.
Yeah, then that helps my point further. He bats above Mitchell Starc now. He may have started below. So he's actually a better batter than how people, than the perception that.
Yeah, but he's a decent lower order batter. But I don't think like
With an average of 17 or something,
okay.
right?
So,
That's bowling average, right?
No, it's batting average.
He has a couple of half centuries. Obviously, we've been spoiled by these all-rounders when we talk about numbers. He has a couple of half centuries. He won that famous test, Ash's first test match in Birmingham, I think, last year.
yeah, that is
was
true.
because of
That
him.
was, yeah. I think he's the number 8 in the world, if that makes sense. But that's not necessarily an all-rounder. So we'll stick him in the wildcards for now. You can pass him along.
Sorry.
Ashwin says hi when you're talking about number 8 batters.
Oh yes, sorry. That's best fast bowling number 8. Anyway, talking of fast bowling number 8, Shashik has picked a fast bowling number 10, I think. Who do you have?
I've picked a fast bowling opener.
Number 3. And
And
Fast
opener,
bowling
correct.
opener.
And I'm actually a little relieved. I thought mine would be the scariest wildcard over there, but thanks for Cummins. Mine is Irfan Pathan.
Whoa!
He qualifies 1,000 runs and 100 wickets.
Okay.
Now, the reason I've picked him again, so I had mentioned context earlier. This one's a little more on emotion. He's delivered against some of India's biggest rivals, all right? As a test hat-trick against Pakistan. The test century has also come against Pakistan. He has a very, very crucial knock in Australia's fastest ground at the Perth, at the Wacker. He came out to bat at number 3 in this game, ahead of Rahul Dravid. He faced up to the likes of Shaun, Brett Lee, Mitchell Johnson, scored 46. India went on to win that test. He was the player of the match for it. He's got 7 5-wicket hauls, which is, I think, more than some of the guys that we
Shashik
have
has
on
come
the
with
table.
an essay, I must say. I'm very impressed for a first-time performance. Amazing.
Yeah, he, like we said earlier, he has opened. He opened in a test in Bangalore against Sri Lanka, scored 93.
His arguments have me sold Irfan Pathan over Andrew Flintoff.
No, come on, Yash. You're just being so anti-England right now.
Not even better than Pat Cummins. Come
Flintoff
on.
was an excellent all-rounder, guys.
Okay,
I mean,
agreed.
And
But
Flintoff,
yeah,
by the way,
can-
one of the fastest bowlers of his generation.
It's okay, he will be
Nightmare
knocked off
pace
the
with
list
the-
soon.
I
Get
won't
your
let
wild
him.
card.
Whose highlights do I want to watch? even if it's in Test cricket. Chaminda was a good bowler, but I don't think he's an all-rounder. So I went with boom boom Shahid Afridi. Okay. Now listen, only
Let's
20
just
odd
end the
tests,
episode.
500s in Test matches, and this is like, see, I go by entertainment value. Shahid Afridi was the kind of cricketer who, if a Test match was getting boring, he would come and bowl seam up.
Not
Yash
on the
has stats. I have stories. I picked Shahid Afridi
Yeah,
because he
please.
once hit a 6 in a Test match of Harbhajan Singh. That was so hard that Ramiz Raja said it made a crippling sound. And for like days after that, I was asking my like people around me, what does that mean? What is a crippling sound?
That's the day you got me.
That is why, and I remember this from when I was a teenager. This is why I picked Shahid Afridi, okay? Because this is a box office cricketer, man. And this is why we also need Flintoff and Stokes in the list. I won't argue for having Afridi in the top 8. It's just a fun pick, to be honest. I should have probably picked Streak or somebody like that who was a more sensible pick. But we need people like Stokes and Flintoff in the list, guys. Of these wildcards, I also do agree Vettori fits in. Vettori for Holder in my books. As much as I love Holder, I just think that the stats in away from home are just not good enough. And Flintoff had better stats away from home.
I think Holder over Flintoff, to be honest, but I don't mind either. I think both of them will probably end up going.
Well, both of them. Why would
Yeah.
both of them go? Who are you going to put in place of
Irfan
Holder
Pathan.
and
It is
Flintoff?
Irfan Pathan.
No, man. Guys, let's be serious. So Ketu has to edit this video quickly.
Yeah,
Who
okay.
are you dropping? Flintoff or Holder?
Holder.
You're dropping Holder.
Yeah.
I'm also dropping Holder. That is our top 8. I still feel like Shaun Pollock is way too low, but anyway. We're going to look very biased, man. Ashwin at 4 and Jadeja at 2. I feel like that's our India bias coming out, but anyway. We are 4 Indians discussing this, so I guess we just have more memories of them, possibly.